بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين نتابعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So inshallah we're continuing with our journey to the hereafter, and this is the description of the Jannah, and we're taking it in details in terms of the pleasures that the believers that will enter Jannah they will see and face, and the different types of food and attires and so forth. And the last thing we talked about was what? What was the last thing we talked about?
The food in Jannah, right?
The food we talked about Jannah? Is that what we talked about? No, we talked about the difference between the pleasures of the world and the pleasures of the hereafter. We talked about 3 or 4 differences between them, and I think we stopped at the food of the people of the Jannah. Is that right? So what type of food they'll be kind of indulging in, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept for them in terms of reward. Now obviously similar to the previous chapter, we talked about how the different things, whatever we're experiencing in the world, is completely different in the hereafter. So even just the types of bounties and pleasures that are in the world compared to the hereafter are not paralleled, they're completely different. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had also mentioned in the Quran some of the other things that have, we have parallel things that are similar to it in the world, but are completely different in the hereafter. And those include obviously drinks and food. So one of the drinks that has been mentioned a lot in the Quran is khamr, right? Now khamr, I know the easiest translation to it, I guess, is alcohol, right? But I think the more translation will probably be wine, I guess, if anything else. And it's an intoxicant, obviously, but in the hereafter, here's the difference, right? So there's a difference, obviously, between what's the wine or the alcohol in this world compared to the one in the hereafter. So from the drink that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to His obedient servants in Jannah is the khamr in Jannah. So I'm going to use the word khamr, right? So just not, because I like to use the terms that are used in the Quran. So the khamr, which essentially can be translated into wine, alcohol, whatever the case is. But the khamr in the Jannah is completely different than it is in this world. And it's a form of reward, at least in terms, the least of it, obviously, anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a bounty, and it's from His favors, and from His generosity subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from His man and karam, and all these things. But many of the scholars sometimes comment that this is a reward for people for obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world and refraining from indulging in these matters. Because even the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whomever drinks it in this world and is addicted to it, then he is prevented from it in the hereafter. But it's completely different in the hereafter. So the khamr in Jannah is absolved, or does not have any of the defects or side effects or the negative aspects that the khamr in this world has. So neither, for example, does it, in terms of its description, it's not the same, the smell that it has, the effect it has, whether on our minds, the headaches, the hangovers, the pain in the stomach that it causes, the sickness that develops because of the indulging and drinking it. And all these things are completely not there. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about it in the Quran, and this is from Surah As-Saffat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it as بَيْضَاء لَذَّةٌ لِلشَّارِبِينَ لَا فِيهَا غَوْلٌ وَلَهُمْ عَنْهَا يُنْزَفُونَ. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described it over here, He said bayda, He said it's white, لَذَّةٌ لِلشَّارِبِينَ, ladha, which means, it comes from tasty, right? Ladith, ladh, which means it's like, savory, right? Tasty. لَذَّةٍ لِلشَّارِبِينَ, those who drink it. لَا غَوْلٌ فِيهَا وَلَهُمْ عَنْهَا يُنْزَفُونَ. Previously it says وَيُطَافُ عَلَيْهِمْ بِآنِيَةٍ بِكَأْسٍ مِّن مَّعِينٍ يُطَافُ عَلَيْهِمْ بِكَأْسٍ مِّن مَّعِينٍ, which means they will be circulated among them. So there will be circulated among them cups, ka'as, which is fairly cups, but they're only specifically for drinking, and it's usually for drinking wine. from flowing spring, min ma'in, from a flowing spring, and he describes subhanahu wa ta'ala as white, right? Bayda ladhatin lisharibin, that is very tasty, delicious, savory for the drinkers. La fiha ghawlun, there is no bad effect there in it. Wala hum anha yunzafun, nor from it will be intoxication. So anything that has to do with anything that's considered negative with the worldly form of khamr is completely different in the hereafter. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described it as white, that it's very tasty, delicious, and that the person who drinks it does not become intoxicated. But everything that is good regarding it is kept. Although one cannot think of anything worldly that is good about the khamr here, but in the hereafter it is, there's obviously something that is good about it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes another ayah. He says, بِأَكْوَابٍ وَأَبَارِيقَ وَكَأْسٍ مِّن مَعِينٍ لَا يُصَدَّعُونَ عَنْهَا وَلَا يُنزِفُونَ. So لَا يُصَدَّعُونَ, which means they don't get headaches, وَلَا يُنزِفُونَ, which means they don't get intoxicated. But it's interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here describing the containers that this will be in. And so He said, بِأَكْوَابٍ وَأَبَارِيقَ وَكَأْسٍ. So these are three different vessels. And many of the scholars comment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described them in the order from larger to smaller. Right? Because you're pouring from one to the other. So He said bi'akwab. The akwab over here is usually described as the larger containers that you keep the fluid in. And it doesn't have anything to hold from it or a tip to pour from. And usually you take from there and you put it into the abariq. Abariq is usually what we consider perhaps the jugs. Pitchers. The pitchers, you put it in there. And then from the pitchers, you pour it into the smaller cups. And then a third description, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes that, and He says, يُسْقَوْنَ مِنْ رَحِيقٍ مَخْتُومٍ خِتَامُهُ مِسْكٍ. And so He said, rahiq makhtum, a rahiq, which is the khamr. Makhtum, which means it's sealed. Nobody has touched it before. Okay, that nobody has touched it. It's kept purely from them. Khitamuhu misk. Now khitamuhu misk can be interpreted as that seal itself is made out of musk, or at the end of the drink, when you finish drinking, the fragrance of musk comes out. Now this is talking about the fragrance. Obviously the fragrance of khamr in this world is not exactly the best of fragrances. Although sometimes you see people trying to smell it to figure out how good it is. But really it's not the best of fragrance. In the hereafter it's completely different. So this is regarding the drink or some specific drink from the people of Jannah. And we're talking obviously other than water. We just talked about the water in Jannah before. Now in terms of the food of the people of Jannah, this is what they're being gifted with. So Imam Bukhari, so this is their initial gift. Right, when the initial reward, the type of food, when they get rewarded by it, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who are able to reap that reward. Ameen. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was talking about the Day of Judgment, in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. He said, تَكُونُ الْأَرْضُ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ خُبْزَ وَاحِدًا. That the Day of Judgment, the entire world will be like a khubza, which means a bread. But it's a bit different over here. The khubza over here is describing it's a bit different. It's referring to almost the dough when you make it, it's a bit round, and how you put it in a container, this is how they used to do it, and then you bake it in that container, so it's a bit rounder, but to do it you have to move it from one hand to the other hand and kind of twist it and round it a little bit. So this is what they're talking about. It's not the flat pita bread or the thin pita bread that we think about. But this is a bit different. So he says on Day of Judgment, the world, تَكُونُ الْأَرْضُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ خُبْزَةً وَاحِدًا. The entire world will be like that, khubza, like one of it. يَتَكَفَّأُهَا الْجَبَّارُ بِيَدِهِ. That the Jabbar would turn it, as the bread is turns it with his hand, بِيَدِهِ. كَمَا يَتَكَفَّأُ أَحَدَكُمْ خُبْزَتُهُ في السفر نزلا لأهل الجنة. Similar to how one of you would turn that khubz, right? Why? Nuzulan, which means this. A nuzul is what you prepare for a guest, or prepare for a person. Like it comes from a sufra, comes from the sufra, which is what you outlie to eat on the ground. And so this is what you prepare for the guest when they arrive. Nuzul. So prepared for the Ahl al-Jannah. Now once this happened, when the Prophet ﷺ is talking, the narration mentions that فَأَتَى رَجُلٌ مِنَ الْيَهُودِ. A person from the Yahud, from Bani Israel, from a Jewish person, came to the Prophet ﷺ when he was talking, and he said, بَارَكَ الرَّحْمَنُ عَلَيْكَ. May Allah bestow His blessings upon you, Ya Aba al-Qasim. This is the kunya of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكَ بِنُزْلِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. Should I not tell you with the nuzul, which is what is going to be gifted or prepared for the guests of Jannah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, and Day of Judgment? So the Prophet ﷺ said, Bala. So over here now, this is the person from another faith. He's going to say to the Prophet ﷺ what's going to happen. So he said, تَكُونُ الْأَرْضُ. So he repeated almost the same thing the Prophet ﷺ said. He said, تَكُونُ الْأَرْضُ خُبْزَ وَاحِدًا. And he said, it will become like the one huge piece of bread, but we described what we're talking about. It's that round one, they keep rounded because they put it in a container, they move it from one hand to another hand to kind of round it up, turning it back and forth. And so he said it would be like one that, كَمَا قَالَ النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم, similar to how the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned. And so the Prophet ﷺ looked at them and smiled. Right? Badat nawajidu, he smiled until his molars kind of nawajid had shown. Because essentially he said the same thing the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned. ثُمَّ قَالَ أَلَا أُخْبِرُكَ بِإِدَامِهِمْ. Should I not tell you with their idam? Idam is what you eat the bread with. Right? So it's what you... the bread, what you dip it in. Right? Idam. It can be saucy, it can be otherwise. It doesn't have to be saucy. But what you dip the bread in, he said, balam wa noon. Right? Balam wa noon. And so they asked, وَمَا هَذَا? What is balam and noon? And so he said, thawr wa noon. Noon in the Arabic language is fish. Right? This is why in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, dhannoon. Right? The owner or the friend or the companion of the noon, which is the fish essentially. And so he said thawr wa noon. So essentially a buffalo or a bull, noon, يَأْكُلُ مِنْ زَائِدَةِ كَبِدِهِمَا 70,000. And so what they're going to eat is the extra piece from their liver. Kabid is the liver, the extra piece, and that's the most tasty part usually of the liver. How many will eat from it? 70,000. And so some of the scholars are commenting saying 70,000 over here is just a term of magnitude, large numbers. It's not necessarily specifically 70,000, but just large numbers and huge numbers. And so Imam al-Nawawi, when he mentioned over here, he's explaining the hadith, he said, an-nuzul is what you prepare for the guests. Okay, so this is what's prepared for the guests. So it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is preparing these, He's treating us as guests, subhanahu wa ta'ala, for people who enter Jannah. And so He will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would essentially make the size or this earth as if it's almost like a bread that can be eaten from it. So this is the preparation for the guests. So they're eating for the waiting. And in addition to that, they will have the thawr, which is the baram, the bull. And we had mentioned before, this bull is being, is being herded or being, eating, fed from the gardens at the outskirts of Jannah. So he's eating from there. So it's obviously the best of crops in Jannah, and so he's being fed from it. And so subhanahu wa ta'ala, essentially this bull will be butchered and will be eating from part of that liver. And in Sahih Muslim, and in Bukhari also, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, he was asked, مَا أَوَّلُ شَيْءٍ يَأْكُلُهُ أَهْلُ الْجَنَّةِ. What is the first thing that people of Jannah would eat? He said, زِيَادَةُ كَبِدِ الْحُوتِ. Right, the extra piece of the liver from the fish. So this is what, a type of food. Now, however, once again, as we also mentioned, whatever we are experiencing in this world is completely different in the hereafter. So you know how similar when we eat food, it has certain characteristics, it has effects. That obviously in the hereafter doesn't happen. Whenever we drink and we eat, there's usually byproducts. Is that right? What are they in the form of? When you eat, what happens? You what?
Digest.
You digest. That digestion, what happens to it? It gets excreted, right? And you drink, the same thing. The least of it is sometimes you either, you're passing gas either upwards or downwards. And even when you pass it, it's usually not exactly the best of things. So all these side effects are not going to happen on the Day of Judgment. So we should not think that when we eat and drink, it's going to be the same thing as this world that we live in, that there are going to be obviously effects of the food and the drink. No, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that this is completely different. And so in the hereafter, it's going to be completely pure of any sort of harm, because it's people themselves that eat it have been purified, they have been cleansed from any sort of impurities. And so also the food that they eat is going to be, doesn't have any sort of any impurities. And so the Prophet ﷺ, as mentioned in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, أول زمرة تدخل الجنة, that the first group of people who enter Jannah, min ummati, from my ummah, will be in the image of the moon, and it's like, in its full form, Laylatul Badr. ثم الذين يدونهم, then the following group, أشد على أشد نجم في السماء إضاءة. They'll be as bright as the brightest star in the heavens. And then after that, like, as you go lower in terms of the brightness. However, he said, describing all of them, he said, لا يتغوطون ولا يتبولون ولا يتمخطون ولا يبزقون. All these people in Jannah, they do not defecate, nor urinate, nor do they يتمخط. يتمخط is when you blow your nose, right? Things that come out of your nose, that. ولا يبزقون, neither do they spit. So neither phlegm comes out or anything like that. But a question obviously, like, would come up sometimes, is if we eat, where does it go? Is that right? So what happens to it?
It's different, right?
Yes, it is different. So there's two questions, right?
Not everything's atomic going to be general, right? I mean, it's like right now everything's atomic base basically, so it's atomic value.
Okay.
I know that it was asked before to one of the imams earlier from one of the atheists, right? And the answer was, it's exactly as the baby in the womb of the mother, having the food and don't.
I know, but the waste product gets funneled through the blood and it goes to the mother and she takes care of it.
It came out in the form of sweat, but it's not smelly.
It comes out what?
Sweat in the form of sweat, but it's not.
In the form of?
Sweat.
Sweat.
Yeah, but it's not as smelly as.
Good, that's one of them. That's true. So it's going to come out in terms of sweat, but it's musk, the fragrance of musk. So the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ أَهْلَ الْجَنَّةِ يَأْكُلُونَ فِيهَا وَيَشْرَبُونَ. He said, the people of Jannah, they eat in it and they drink. وَلَا يَتْفُلُونَ, they don't spit. وَلَا يَتَبَوَّلُونَ, they don't urinate. وَلَا يَتَغَوَّطُونَ, they don't defecate. وَلَا يَتَمَخَّطُونَ, no, neither, like, comes everyone else. And so one asked from about al-ta'am, what happens to the food? He said, كَجُشَاء الْمِسْك. So this is referring to the burp. It's going to be burped out, similar to how misk comes out, but it's a burping of misk. In another narration, he said, جُشَاء وَرَشْح. Jusha over here obviously means the burp, rash, which means the sweating, right? When it comes out of your body, right? But however, the sweat is not going to have any sort of foul smell. It is completely out of musk. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned that in Jannah, there will be other things, but the other question that comes out is what's the point of eating then? If we're not in the same form, we neither get tired, we neither, we don't need food, there's no hunger. Obviously there's no hunger in Jannah, right? إِنَّ لَكَ فِيهَا أَلَّا تَجُوعَ وَلَا ta'ara. For you there is no, for you in Jannah, you'll not be hungry, neither go naked. So you're not going to suffer any cold, any sickness or disease or any hunger. But what's the point of eating then? Pure enjoyment, right? Have you guys ever just wanted to eat something for this pure enjoyment? Only 3 people are nodding? Come on. All of you should be nodding. We all do it. We indulge in it. Especially if you talk about chocolates. Nobody eats chocolates when they're hungry. Unless you're a kid, but that's okay.
Will we be hungry though? Why aren't we eating there?
Will we be hungry? That's a good question. We never will get hungry.
So why do we eat then? Why aren't we?
That's why I asked that question. Do you ever eat something just for enjoyment? What are desserts? Right, just for pure enjoyment. Okay? And a lot of times in this world, this is from the pleasures of this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward us for something similar, but just for pure enjoyment. Just because I feel like I want to taste something good, right? For the pleasure of eating. And so this is the purpose, the reason behind it. That's it. There's no hunger, no need, no nothing. Even some narrations mention that we brush our, we have combs made out of gold. Why do we need combs? Do we need combs? We don't. We're in perfect shape. Like everybody's just, you wake up in the morning. Well, actually, you don't wake up in the morning, right? Because we don't fall asleep, right? But you're just perfect all the time. No need to brush your hair. But why would you need it? Just for pleasure. And so it's just mainly for pleasure and enjoyment. But that's a question that comes up. Now, in terms, obviously, we have food, we have drink. What are the containers? These are usually placed in something. Is that right? So what are these containers made out of? Gold and silver. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned this. وَيُطَافُ عَلَيْهِمْ بِصَحَافٍ مِّن ذَهَبٍ وَأَكْوَابٍ. And يُطَافُ عَلَيْهِمْ, which means they will be passed by and surrounded by, or people, يُطَاف, طَاف, which means circulated around. with containers, sahaf, which are almost like plates. Min dhahab, from gold, wa akwab, and cups also from gold. In another verse in the Quran, وَيَطَافَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِأَنِيَةٍ مِّن فِضَّةٍ. They will be circulated among them with plates from silver, wa akwab, also from silver. كَانَتْ قَوَارِيرَ. In addition to that, the purity of it is the purity of clearness of glass. So it's a pureness in glass, but yet it's also made out of gold and silver. And Allah, and the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in a hadith, he said, he was talking about the Jannah, and this is narrated by Bukhari Muslim. He says, وَجَنَّتَانِ مِن فِضَّةٍ وَجَنَّتَانِ مِن ذَهَبٍ. So the narration says, جَنَّتَانِ مِن فِضَّةٍ آنِيَتُهُمَا وَمَا فِيهِمَا. And so you have a garden, a Jannah, in, by the way, it's multiple Jannahs. You'd have in there multiple things. So one of them will be made out of silver, and everything from it is made out of silver, right? It's contained, it's vessels, and yatiyam of everything in it, vessels and just everything in it. وَجَنَّتَانِ مِن ذَهَبٍ, and two from gold. Everything from it, it's aniyah, is made also from gold. And so this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَيَطُوفُ عَلَيْهِمْ وِلْدَانٌ مُخَلَّدُونَ بِأَكْوَابٍ وَأَبَارِيقَ وَكَأْسٍ مِّن مَعِينٍ. And so we mentioned the difference between the kub and a bariq and wal-kas. Alright, now we're eating, we're drinking, we're obviously not going to be naked, right? We're going to be clothed. So what are we going to be clothed with? Alright, and we're going to be decorated. Obviously we're going to have adornments and decorations, okay? And fragrances. So all these things are from the pleasures. So we're talking about jewelry, ornaments, and bukhur, incense. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا. He rewarded them because of their patience, Jannah and Harir. Harir means what? Silk. But by the way, silk comes in different ways, different kinds. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He described another ayah. He said, يُحَلَّوْنَ فِيهَا مِنْ أَسَاوِرَ مِنْ ذَهَبٍ وَلُؤْلُؤَ وَلِبَاسُهُمْ فِيهَا حَرِيرٌ. He said they will be adorned, yuhallawna, which means adorned, decorated, min asawira. Asawira, which means vases made out of dhahab, gold, wa lu'lu'a, and pearls. Wa libasuhum, and their clothing in it is made out of silk. And remember we said where this is going to come from? From a tree, right? It's going to come one of the trees that blossom, that fruit from it is produced, that comes out from the silk, silk comes out from it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said, وَحُلُّ أَسَاوِرَ مِن فِضَّةٍ. Okay? And also the first one, ayah, is from gold. This one, they will be adorned and decorated with bracelets made out of silver. So it's gold and silver. So they'll be adorned with bracelets of silver. وَسَقَاهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ شَرَابًا طَهُورًا. And their Lord has given them a purified drink. Now the clothing also have colors, and the most, the color that's been mentioned in the Quran is green. Okay, يَحَلُّونَ فِيهَا أَسَاوِرَ مِن ذَهَبٍ وَيَلْبَسُونَ ثِيَابًا خُضْرًا min sundus wa istabraq. And so they will be decorated, adorned with bracelets made out of gold, and they will wear clothing that are green, made out of sundus and istabraq. What is sundus and istabraq?
The soft and the thick.
Thin and thick.
Good. So sundus is thin silk. Usually this is the one that you wear right on your body. Okay? And then istabraq is the thicker kind, usually you wear on top of your clothes. Okay, so your outer garment is made out of thick silk. Your inner garment that really touches your body is made out of the thinner one, the softer one. مُتَّكِئِينَ فِيهَا عَلَى الْأَرَائِكَ. They're reclining on the couches. So there's in terms of adornments and well, it includes also, by the way, I didn't mention this. I did mention this before, but it's not in the hadith. I didn't mention it in the hadith, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, أَنْ يَتَهُمْ بِالذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ. Their vessels are gold and silver. وَأَمْشَاطُهُمْ الذَّهَبِ. And their combs are made out of gold. وَوَقُودُ مَجَامِرِهِمْ. And the fuel of their, what you used to light the incense with, al-alwa, right? So al-alwa is referring to oud, right? A very beautiful form of oud. So even their bukhur, whatever they light with, is made out of oud itself. وَرَشْحُهُمْ الْمِسْكِ. And their sweat is musk. And obviously these clothing that we wear is not like the clothing in this world, in terms of that they don't wear out, right? They don't They need to be washed, obviously. They don't need to be washed. They don't tear, they don't wear, nothing becomes depleted. And so this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man yadkhul al-jannah yan'am wala yay'as." Whoever enters Jannah will be in complete pleasure. Yan'am, in complete pleasure. Wala yay'as, does not despair. La tubla thiyabuhu, his wares don't wear out. Wala yafna shababuhu, and his youth is not depleted. Did we talk about the age? We did talk about age, okay. Now obviously we're eating, we're wearing clothes. We're not going to be standing. Are we going to be standing all the time? No, we're talking about pleasures over here, right? So includes us reclining and sitting. Is that right? You guys agree? All right. So reclining and sitting. The Prophet ﷺ and the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, they mentioned some of these descriptions. And so these are the best of essentially beds, best of couches, best of seatings, their coverings, the inner covering is made out of istabraq. Like the inner layer is made out of istabraq, which means you're not utilizing. So if it's made out of thick silk, the inside, what do you think about the outside? It hasn't been described to us, but it just told you what the inside. If the inside is this beautiful and glorious and soft, what about the outside? How comfortable it would be? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the Jannah. He said, "Fiha sururun marfu'a," right? So in it there are couches that are raised up high. وَأَكْوَابٌ مَوْضُوعَةٌ, cups that have been placed. وَنَمَارِقُ مَصْفُوفَةٌ. Namariq are, yes, we said, I'm trying to think. Cushions, thank you. Cushions that have been lined up. وَزَرَابِيُّ مَبْثُوثَ. Zarabi are the carpets, right? They have been spread. And then another verse in the Quran, وَمُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى فُرُشٍ بَطَائِنُهَا مِنْ إِسْتَبْرَقٍ. They are reclining on beds whose linings are made out of that thick silk, right? Silk brocade. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى رَفْرَفٍ خُضْرٍ وَعَبْقَرِيٍّ حِسَانٍ. So they're reclining on green, rafraf is also cushions, by the way, okay? So they're leaning on green cushions, رفرف خضر, they're green cushions. وعبقري حسان. Some translations they translate abqari as carpets, but abqari essentially is something that is a bit more than that. It's everything that is amazing or perfected in terms of its quality. Okay, so they will be reclining on cushions that are green. وعبقري حسان, which means that their quality is of the best of excellent qualities. Or you can translate it as, some people translate it as having carpets. Now, will you be serving yourself? No, right? You'll be served, right? You worked in this world, you'll be served in the hereafter. And so this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَطُوفُ عَلَيْهِمْ وِلْدَانٌ مُخَلَّدُونَ. Around them, they will be circling around them, wildan, which means children, and they're boys, young boys that are mukhallad. What does mukhallad mean? Eternal, right? Mukhalladun. إِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ, if you see them, what are you going to think? حَسِبْتَهُمْ لُؤْلُؤًا مَنْثُورًا. If you see them from their beauty, as if they are scattered pearls. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is essentially, he mentioned this in several verses, but this is one of them. Now Ibn Kathir, he had mentioned, he said, يَطُوفُ عَلَى أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ لِلْخِدْمَةِ, right? That circulating around the people of Jannah will be young boys. Why? To serve them, right? مُخَلَّدُونَ, which means that they're eternal. لا يتغيرون عنها, they do not change from that state, which means they never grow up. They're going to be always in that state. لا تزيد أعمارهم في تلك السن, which means that their age will not change. They're always going to be as they are. And if you see them, there are pearls in how they spread around and serving other people, right? They're serving people and stuff like that. Their beauty as they're serving the people, inhabitants of Jannah, are like the pearls that are moving around in their beauty and their reflection and their brightness and their happiness as they're doing that. Sorry? Are they human? That's an excellent question.
Like, are they like God? Or they are like angels?
So where do they come from? No, they look like us. They're not angels. They look like us.
The kids are
But they're children. One of them, okay, one question, why children? Right?
energy.
Innocent also.
It's a very valid, I just remembered my son, right? Actually, I think somebody did this before. They put their fitness tracker on their kid, right? And within, I think, a couple of hours, there was like 20,000 steps or something around that area, right? You're like, what is this kid doing? But yes, energy, if you're talking about energy. No, but really, but yes, no, they are wildan, which means boys, right? So they do look like us. But where do they come from?
Do you think these are the children who died before the age of puberty?
Remember we talked about that?
I didn't come to the classes.
Okay, so where do they come from? So that is one opinion, right? One opinion is that they are the children of the Muslims that died at a young age. That's one opinion. What's the second opinion?
They are in creation.
They are?
Creation.
They are their own creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them specifically as a different creation. They created them that way in Jannah to serve the believers. Okay? That's another opinion. What's the third one?
And they can be the children of the
Excellent. The children of the disbelievers that died at a young age. Right? They'll be in Jannah serving. The opinion I lean more close, the opinion that I lean a bit more, and a lot of the scholars lean towards a bit more, including Ibn Kathir, is that it's not the other two opinions, but these are a creation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in Jannah to be the servants for the people in Jannah. Because we talked about the young, the young people who die, whether Muslims or non-Muslims, when they die, what happens. Obviously the evidence is clear. If they're young Muslims for parents, they will enter Jannah because they will act as intercessors. They will almost have like a what do they call it? I'tisamat. Strikes in front of Jannah. They're not going to enter unless they have their parents with them, and so they will take their parents and enter Jannah with them. So this is clear, but what about the non-Muslim children, right? The children who died at a young age, the Hanbali school of thought is that they would enter Jannah, right? The other opinion is that they will have their own test, okay? Wallahu a'lam. But none of these indicate that they will be the servants of the people in Jannah. Yes, the other opinions exist, but Wallahu a'lam, the stronger opinion is that these are an entire creation. But the question is, why young children?
They don't have any sin.
They don't have, no. These are, remember we said they are a different creation. These are specific creations Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created for Jannah, which means they never exited Jannah. They were always in Jannah.
Because, it's not making any sense that the older serving the
Well, we could have just created older ones. Because we are a bit more casual with children. We don't shy away from them. Because you have to remember, they're serving you in your palaces, in your home, with your spouses, in your regular clothing that you're dressing. We don't tend to shy away from children when they walk in. Is that we're comfortable with them, right? Is that clear? So this is just more for your comfort. Is that understood? From that aspect.
You need the privacy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think you'd like to have privacy in your home, right?
Yeah, but with the children, we don't.
No, we're a bit laxed with children. Would you wear your hijab in front of a 6-year-old, 5-year-old? You wouldn't. I'm not saying there's hijab in the hereafter. Allah alam, I don't know. But I'm just saying, we're a bit more, generally speaking, laxed with children. People have, I shouldn't say this, things have changed a little bit, but a while ago, people would not be comfortable going out in their PJs, right? Or hosting adults in the home with their PJs. But if a child walks into your house, you're like, yeah, whatever, you're in your PJs, there's no difference, right? Now, things have changed. People go to Walmart with their PJs and sometimes even, do things in their PJs outside in public. For me, this is a bit weird, but I guess we live in an interesting time. All right, anyway, but this is with the servants of Jannah. All right, so follow that. So obviously we're not gonna, so we are eating, we're having our clothing and fragrances. Obviously we don't, we wouldn't want to live in seclusion, right? We would want to have gatherings and meetings because this is from enjoyment, right? Meeting other people, inhabitants of Jannah, discussing things. And so there is a souq in Jannah. Souq is really translated, you can translate it as a market, but it's not for buying and selling. It's for a gathering. Okay, and so this is narrated by Imam Muslim, rahimahullah, and Anas ibn Malik. He said, "Inna fil jannati lasuqan." Right? Verily in Jannah there is a gathering, a marketplace. Ya'tunaha kulla jum'ah. They come to it every Friday. Now every Friday over here doesn't mean the day of Friday, it just means every week. Because remember in Jannah there is no day, there is no night, there is no days of the week. Right? It's all the same. But it's a time span where they kind of gather once a week. Kull jum'ah. فَتَهِبُّ فِرِيحَ الشَّمَالِ. And so a wind will come from the north. فَتَحْثُ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ وَثِيَابِهِمْ. It will strike their faces and their clothing. فَيَزْدَادُونَ حُسْنًا وَجَمَالًا. They will increase in beauty, right? How should I translate? يَزْدَادُونَ حُسْنًا, I guess perfection, وَجَمَالًا, right? And beauty. Perfection and beauty. فَيَرْجِعُونَ إِلَى أَهْلِهِمْ. They will return back to their palaces and houses, to their family, and they had increased in perfection and beauty. فَيَقُولُ لَهُمْ أَهْلُهُمْ. Their family will say, وَاللَّهِ, or by Allah, you have increased in perfection and beauty. And this is the aspect of Jannah. Things always increase. Things will move from one thing to the next best thing. So including you yourself, you'll always keep increasing in beauty and perfection. And so they'll tell, Wallahi, you have increased in beauty and perfection. And so they will also tell them, by Allah, وَلَقَدْ اسْتَدْتُمْ, you also have increased in beauty and perfection. So it's not just for people that go to the market and gathering place, but also the people that will stay in the rooms and the palaces. And so Imam Nawawi, he had commented, as I mentioned, he said, as-suq is just a place for a gathering. And so this is the gathering. Now also when they gather, we tend to discuss things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a glimpse of some of the discussions that happen between Ahl al-Jannah. Because we're social beings. We want to meet once again one another, have enjoyment and chit-chat. And multiple verses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned this. And one of them is وَأَقْبَلَ بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ قَالُوا إِنَّا كُنَّا قَبْلُ فِي أَهْلِنَا مُشْفِقِينَ فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَوَقَانَا عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ إِنَّا كُنَّا قَبْلُ نَدْعُوهُ إِنَّا كُنَّا مِنْ قَبْلُ نَدْعُوهُ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْبَرُّ الرَّحِيمُ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse he says وَأَقْبَلَ بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ. So they will approach one another. They'll kind of come towards one another, inquiring to each other. يَتَسَاءَلُونَ. They'll inquire to each other. قالوا, they would say, إِنَّا كُنَّا قَبْلُ فِي أَهْلِنَا مُشْفِقِينَ. Indeed, we were previously among our people, mushfiqeen, which means fearful. Okay, we were afraid. Afraid with, why were they afraid?
From the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
From displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's correct, right? From punishing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We were, from displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. So Allah conferred favor upon us. And so if you notice, what are they talking about? They're talking about, they're in Jannah, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded us. They were asked, talking about, remember we used to be, doing this, we were afraid of Allah's punishment, we were fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Allah now is rewarding us. فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Allah has conferred His favor upon us. وَوَقَانَ عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ. And He protected us from the punishment of the scorching, very hot fire. Adab as-samum. Inna kunna min qablu nad'uhu. Indeed, we used to make dua to Him. Nad'uhu, supplicate to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nad'uhu innahu huwa al-barru ar-rahim. Indeed, He is al-barru ar-rahim. Ar-rahim, obviously, the most merciful. Al-barru, beneficent. Most of excellent givers. It's kind of hard to kind of translate that one. Okay?
This is one of Allah's attributes, ya Barr.
Yes.
Is that the same meaning? Source of
Yes.
good?
Yes. Okay. Now, in addition to that, right? So over here, we're meeting each other, we're eating. Sometimes some of us might have, just wishes, right? Random wishes. I used to kind of, do something in this world. Oh Allah, can I do this? I just wish I want to do it. Now this is kind of interesting because we have everything we need, right? We don't need anything with just complete pleasures. But sometimes you want to wish something more, and it's kind of interesting. This is the nature of human beings. We always want more. So some of the people of Jannah will have that. They will desire something more. They would want to wish something more. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give them what they desire, but also in a completely different way. So in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was talking. I think I stepped on something. Right. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was talking about a person from Ahl al-Jannah. He said, "Inna rajul min Ahl al-Jannah ista'adhana rabbahu fi az-zar'." He asked, he asked his Lord, can I crop? I want to plant something, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell him, "Alasta fima shi't." Aren't you in whatever you want? Desire, look at all these pleasures. And he said, so the person will say, "Bala," right? وَلَكِنْ أُحِبُّ الزَّرْعَ. He says, yes, but I like to plant. I want to crop. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَبَذَرَ, right? So He gives them, He says, okay, plant. And so this person will place the seedling, place the seed into the crop, into the plant. However, it's completely different, things are different. So the Prophet ﷺ said, فَبَادَرَ الطَّرْفُ نَبَاتَهُ وَاسْتِوَاءَهُ وَاسْتِحْصَادَهُ. فَبَادَرَ الطَّرْفُ, which means once he placed that seed, what happened next was faster than the glimpse of the eyesight. Once he placed it, what happened to that seed, right? He said, نَبَاتُهُ وَاسْتِوَاءُهُ. The growth of that plant happened, and its complete vegetation occurred. وَاسْتِحْصَادُهُ, and when you reap the fruits of it, happened all of a sudden. So it grew all within an instant of an eye blink. This all happened. فَكَانَ أَمْثَالَ الْجِبَالِ. It was like the huge, as the mountains. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell him, دُونَكَ يَا ابْنَ آدَمْ, here you are, it's close to you, there's nothing preventing you. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يُشْبِعُكَ شَيْء. Nothing will satisfy your hunger. And it's not a negative thing. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him this, you can have whatever you want. Now, the Prophet ﷺ was mentioning this while a Bedouin, an Arab, was sitting there, right? And so I'm going to mention this narration because it's kind of funny, because that Bedouin looked at this narration and he told the Prophet ﷺ, Wallahi, O Messenger of Allah, this person in the Jannah you're talking about him is either a person from Quraysh or from the Ansar, right? And he's explaining, he says either from Quraysh or from Ansar. He's not from us, the Arabs, the Bedouin. He says because these people from Quraysh and Ansar, they are people of crops. We are people of what? فَلَسْنَا أَصْحَابَ الزَّرْعِ. We're not people of cropping, right? We're other people. We like camels, we like outskirts and stuff like that. And so the Prophet ﷺ laughed, right, at the comment. All right, so that's in terms of cropping.
So humans will have the same feelings and...
Not feelings. Feelings are completely different. The enjoyment is completely different. But whatever you desire, because sometimes we want, we might desire things that we were used to in this world. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not prevent us. Although it will not be exactly the same, but if, for example, each of us have their own inclination. Some people like to crop. Some people like to hunt, I guess, right? Some people want to eat meat, some people want vegetation. So even the thought process, if there's there's another hadith, or some of the scholars mentioned this, that a bird will be flying, the minute you look at it and you desire, this will be tasty, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be in front of you, cooked and ready. Whatever you desire happens. Right?
Will you be praying there? Will there be salah there?
Not salah in terms of the active prayer, but Allah subhanahu. But there are acts of worship, but they are become so natural to us, like breathing. Yulhamuna tasbih. Right, so it's ilham. It's so natural, instinctive to us that as we're sitting, we're praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are doing all these things, and it doesn't take effort, because you remember the effort is exerted in this world, when we're living. This is the test and tribulation of it. But in the hereafter, those praises come natural to us. It doesn't take effort. Wallahu a'lam. So nobody's going to tell you not to pray. but okay. So here's the thing: nothing is mandatory. Okay, whatever we desire will happen. Okay, but don't think of it as something as being mandatory. Okay?
Are there people, human beings in Jannah now, or is this something that's going to happen after the day of judgment?
So people in Jannah, in terms of their body and spirit, no. Their spirit, yes. So there are some people that their spirit is already in Jannah, yes. But the complete, because we had talked about this earlier when we talked about the relationship between the spirit and the body, their attachment and so forth. In the hereafter, the attachment between the spirit and the body is complete, so that the enjoyment that it experiences is the most of complete experiences with the body and the spirit. After death, the difference between a person who's alive and a death is the relationship between the spirit and the body. The spirit is completely detached from the body. That can experience the pleasure of Jannah. Some people will be rewarded to be allowed to fly around in Jannah. But their bodies will not experience that. They may experience it obviously a little bit, because sometimes the soul attaches a little bit to the body and comes back again. But the complete pleasure, entering completely body and spirit, it only happens in the hereafter.
After the judgment?
Obviously after the judgment, yes. Because you don't enter Jannah until after the scales and the judgments and all these things. And passing the sirat and everything is being purified, and then we enter the Jannah.
That period, what you say is barzukh or
Barzakh.
Barzakh?
Yes.
That's the period when your body is still here.
So we have 3 different periods. Before your body enters your soul in this world, and then your body in the soul, this is the time period where you're alive, and then there's the death period, and then the life of the hereafter. Different transition stages. So between the death and the hereafter, there's called the barzakh. That dimension where it's more of the spiritual realm. Okay? The punishment of the grave, the reward of the grave, the completely different experiences, the reality that exists beyond this world.
Seeing the hell, or you could be seeing the heaven.
So you will be rewarded based on your deeds. And whatever is happening in this grave, usually what's after it is more. So if there's pleasure in this grave, after it's usually more. If you're a person who is experiencing torment in the grave, if it's enough to cleanse your sin, then afterwards is better. If not, then afterwards it's usually worse. Wallahu a'lam. May Allah protect all of us. Now we're going to have to stop here to take a few minute break, inshallah, before we start our fiqh class. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.